welcome everybody. We're happy to have you here in our little experimental session. We have a very hashtaggy title, as Johannes just mentioned, and we've put it up here. Hannah's sharing her screen. We will talk about diverse social, digital, remote culture, because never did we realize more that the world is still work in progress than we did in the last 2 years. It made us think a lot, and we thought about the past, the present we're now in, how we got here, and how we get to the future, and how that future might look like. And since this is still work in progress, one of our subtitles is A Letter from the Future, and that is something we will close with. But to start with, I hand over to Hannah.
Hey everyone, thank you for the introduction, Anke. So today we will first do a little interview, a fun, engaging interview with the past, present, and the future. Then we'll go into questions with the audience. So please think of your questions, write them in the chat box, and later on you can actually turn on your camera or voice and ask us questions, and then we'll have our little summary.
Yes, and now you may ask, how are we having this interactive conversation? And today we're doing some time traveling. So Anke will be with us today from the future, and she's a freelance relationship officer, and we'll know more about that later. Hannah will be moderating the conversation, and she will be representing herself in the present. And myself, I today come from the past, and I'm a program manager, and I will be reflecting on things, how it was back then, and maybe you can guess which decade I come from later.
Great. So is everyone ready to time travel?
Let's do this.
All right, let's do this. So we've now traveled and we're ready to go. As you can see, some backgrounds have changed and we can see who's already in the past and the future. So, as we have just known, how Johannes has mentioned, recently a lot of stuff has changed in the way we work because of some recent events in the last 2 years, and that has been the pandemic. And the pandemic has changed us and made lots of us be able to work from home or remote. We rarely see our colleagues anymore, and if we do, it's always from a social distance, and sometimes we are now taking calls on the go and work, which has not allowed us to work from different countries or different cities. We now can live in Hamburg and work in Berlin and vice versa, which was probably not possible before for many companies. So I'd like to interview the past and the future and ask you, what has recently changed in the way that we work recently? What has been a major impact on the way that we work? Feel free to answer.
Well, I'm really surprised to hear everything that you just said. But first, maybe I can talk about how it was back in the days. Because when I was studying, computers were not really something that you would find in every home. And you would go to libraries and read books and read papers a lot.
Crazy.
And
very time consuming.
By the time I got to college, computers were a thing, and then also in the workplace we were able to reduce paper dependence a lot. And now we have this amazing floppy disk where you can store information. Of course, you have to make several backups because you never know when one of those will fail. But I'm pretty sure we will manage to fix this in the future.
Yeah, I hope you will, because all this waste, I mean, all this plastic floppy disk and all this paper, I mean, how it doesn't sound very responsible. So, Hannah, you were asking for what changed the work, the way we work recently. And from my point of view, after all the pandemic years, I think we had 5 or 6 years of pandemic. A huge impact was made by the Borderless Working Act, because we realized borders weren't very helpful for people to travel and make borderless work possible. So the Borderless Work Act, but that combined with the remote tax revolution, because we realized the social systems the social security systems needed to change. So we all signed the remote tax revolution. Plus, what had a major impact, and that makes the three things that had a major impact complete, was the natural capital and social capital impact balance sheet, which was introduced for all listed companies. So we need to be compliant to the natural capital and social capital impact sheet to make sure our carbon footprint and handprint are kept in balance.
Well, that's a lot of changes, and seems to be a lot more you have to think about when you're going to work every single day. And it's not just on the whim, like I just would like to go to work and take the train and I don't have to think so much about it. But yeah, I've been working from home, and I guess I've been saving a lot of energy from that. And I'm happy to see it's change in the future. So how I was actually hired 5 years ago, my most recent company, was through a network called LinkedIn. And it's been quite popular in the last years. You kind of make your online profile. It's like the Facebook of your career. And then you just update your profile and you can see lots of jobs sent to your inbox. And I got that through my connections and applied through my LinkedIn profile. And then I got my job. How did you get your job in the past, Gabby?
Well, it was very common to have your resume and hand it over to companies. Of course, that would take a lot of energies from you, but you could also check ads in the newspapers. At first, some of the jobs were, of course, gender split, so there were ads for job men and ads for women. But recently, with the invention of the World Wide Web, that is changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So actually, what I do is I put out my profile at the Global Skill Exchange and have companies applying to me. And also I'm supported by a job crafting coach. So we have job crafting coaches who help to identify and develop our personal skills and brand. And helps us to match them with market demands. So plus also, as you mentioned before, you hand your CV in at companies. We don't have like fixed company constructs, so we work in fluid organizations because it seemed to be too complicated and unflexible, to make people work for one company, then for the other. It clearly doesn't make sense. So we decided to have fluid organizations, and that's also part of the Borderless Work Act. To make it easier for people to really contribute to jobs and projects where their skills match.
Well, that seems like something crazy. I cannot imagine working for multiple companies at a time and not have that job security like I have now. I couldn't imagine how it works with health insurance, especially in Germany. But as I said before, working right now is that I don't have to travel that often to work. But in the past, I'd say my normal work time to travel was about 20 minutes. I'd hop on the train and then I'd be at work, be done around 6 o'clock, come home, make dinner, and then do my evening things, and then start the day again. But a normal working day, I would just, get my coffee, have some collaborative calls with teams, answer emails, work on some projects, and that would be a day. How does a normal working day look to you two?
I don't have normal working days. So I find it interesting that you still do some traveling, because traveling is strictly limited and it's very tightly controlled and monitored, because we have to be compliant to our carbon footprint regulations. So usually I might work from home or in the office, and it's sort of measured. You see the environment behind me, so it's all, you know, in one place. We can work here, we can live here, we can meet friends here, we can meet colleagues here, and this is a real environment. But what I do in the mornings, after grabbing a coffee, I join in the HoloZoom. So it's funny that we use this data technology we're having here at this conference, because the HoloZoom is really cool. It's still a bit buggy sometimes, but you dial into a Zoom and you sit in a virtual environment with all the people. And it might look like the environment behind me, and here's the HoloZoom box behind me. And then I have virtual walks and talks with some colleagues. And plus, since I'm a gig economy manager and a freelance relationship manager, I check the global equality, the global skill exchange, where we find people. So, and check what demands my customers have. Then I do some talent investing at the global skill exchange. So we have AI-based ETF, and ETF stands for Equality Talent Funds, where you can invest into people. And then I put together teams for customers. That's what I do.
Wow, that is really surprising, because normally I would say that I spend a lot of time in different meetings as a manager. And to be honest, sometimes
what are managers?
Well, we have managers that
Are there also women managers?
No, not that many.
Oh, okay, I see.
Not that many, but that is changing, I would say. But yeah, as I was saying, I would normally try my meetings to be in different buildings so I can see more people and talk to more people, and also do a little bit of exercise. So I found it quite interesting what you just mentioned.
Yeah, likewise. So,
well, I'm happy to say that right now in the present, both of my managers are women, and it's getting quite popular. So I know that in the past it was not as often, but I'm happy to see in the future that even if there isn't managers, we still have women leading women.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy that you asked this, because I really didn't think about making a difference. Yeah, but so be it.
As it shouldn't. What's more important for you? So right now, everything is a balance. I really value having money and time, but I would say that I work 40 hours a week, and my weekends are very, very precious to me, and I don't like to work on the weekends, and I do try to get my work done between the 8 hours per day. But sometimes you need to spend more of your time working to get the money, and a lot of people prefer to have more time to themselves and less money. So what is more important, and do you have enough leisure time in your life?
I didn't get that right, Hannah. So you have to work for all the money you get? You have to work then?
Yes, so I have to work 40 hours a week, and then I get my monthly, not a week.
I see.
40 hours, yes, and then 40 hours a week, and then I get my monthly salary.
Okay, that's interesting, because we have part of it is an unconditional basic income, and that allows me to pursue my personal skills, to do learning, and to improve my personal brand value at the global skill exchange, and to contribute to open source. So yeah, money is nice, but it's all about time balancing, and because the time is what you need to invest to improve yourself and to contribute to the world. So time is definitely more important. So yeah, if only I had as much time as I have money. So.
Wow, I was going to say that 40 hours a week was really fair, because a lot of times, in order to get things done, you have to really spend 60 or something, depending on the schedules. You know, we have first to market goals. And now that you mentioned this basic income for everyone, I cannot put that in my mind how that would work. I mean, why would people work anyways?
Yeah, because they want to contribute also to their open source project, because that's really important, you know, to share knowledge, to learn from each other. And you know, most of the problems have grown so complex. We only can solve them working in networks and sharing knowledge, and that's so important. That's so much more important than improving your personal income, because we are part of a global system.
Yeah, and that brings me to the next question, is how important is what you do for who you are, and how do you measure your personal success? Right now, it's becoming more and more popular that people are taking jobs as passion projects, and that your job shouldn't be everything about you, and you shouldn't be your job. And it's becoming like people are changing their thoughts in this way. I love what I do as I work as a marketing manager and event manager. This is also my passion because it's something I love, bringing people together, networking. But I know in the past it was different. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think it helps when the job that you do relates. So, for example, I'm a very logical and organized person, and that helps in the job that I do, managing. But in regards of success, I would say you have to learn to separate like what is expected from you, especially being a woman, get a family, raising kids, and also be able to have a career.
So men don't have, so they're not integrated into raising kids, or I mean, what's the family concept like in the past? Sounds crazy, because I think of family as being a whole, and what you just said, Gabi, is that it's fragmented. There's the woman and the man. It doesn't sound like real pair doing. So is that what relationships were in the past?
Yes, that is
Crazy.
the normal.
Yeah, well, not for me any longer. So, but back to your question, Hannah. How do I measure my personal success? Well, I don't need to, and I don't have to, because we have the Equality Talent Funds at the so the ETFs at the Global Skill Exchange, and I see my personal value there. So, and when people decide to invest into my personal brand, that adds to my value. So, but again, it's essential. So I try my best to contribute to my personal brand in everything I do. So, and at the same time, I try to be compliant with the global purpose and sustainability standards. So that's part of my success too. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's how you measure your success, and it's all based on things within the ecosystem and how you're treating the planet and everything else. Right now, I definitely base my success on my own circumstances and my own bubble, not so much of the greater bubble. And that brings me to my next question is, right now, like salaries are a topic that people are paid appropriately for their workload, and that if you know that some companies are underpaying for people who should be more senior depending on what kind of company they're in. How is this now? For me, it's definitely something that each year it's discussed, and then you're measured on how well you did against your KPIs in the previous year, and that's basically how you can get more money for your salary. But how has it been for you two?
Yeah, but that sounds strange. So you have one or two persons who decide about your personal value or your contribution? Sounds weird.
You have a whole team of people.
Okay, so you need to report to them.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I think salaries I couldn't really say because you cannot really talk about salaries. It's something that is negotiated in private and it's considered confidential information. Um, I do remember one time being in a situation where a woman was hired to do basically the same job but with a different title, but maybe because the college that these two people were coming from were different, then maybe that's why the roles were different and they were differently categorized.
Okay, so you didn't have a chance to see other people, how much money other people earned, or okay,
Not at all.
Right now,
interesting.
it's also a very hush-hush topic. You should not ask, well, generally in Germany, you should not ask for people what their salaries are. And usually when you're negotiating a new contract for work or a new job, you don't get to know what the salary will be till the very end of your interview.
Yeah,
Seems
I
fair.
don't know. I don't know what to make of that.
How is it for you, Anke?
Yeah, I don't think so much of it because, as I said, I decided to go public at the Global Skill Exchange, so it's very transparent what I earn and what I do. So I don't need to think about do I get enough money or am I paid properly for my workload. So we do have incentive packages for people, for attracting and retaining people. And we try to be very inventive on this. For example, we have 3 weeks paid leave a year to work on charity, social, or open source projects. It's standard practice. So, because not all the value you can create or you're able to create by applying your skills can be measured or paid with by money. So that doesn't make sense.
Are you saying that everyone can know what you earn?
Yes, why not? So it's only numbers.
Doesn't that create some competition between colleagues?
No. Why should
No.
it?
Because other people can, if you know what your colleague is earning, then you have similar responsibilities. They earn less, might make them feel less.
Less like important or
Yes.
less
It
value?
might hurt. It might hurt their egos a bit.
Yeah, but if your ego is tied to money, then something's wrong here. You know, we have so many problems and huge major problems we have to solve globally. We cannot pay too much attention to egos, which define themselves by how much money I earn. I mean, that's so ridiculous. I mean, we went through the pandemic. We are now getting a grip on climate change. Maybe we have the next pandemic ahead. We're losing 300 species every day. So those are the problems we need to think about. So
Interesting. So as we briefly talked about the organizational structure of your companies, I know you both had sent me through the time warp your scribble of your organizational structure. So I will first present mine.
so organization is that company, that former company construction. Okay, yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, I'm curious to see that.
All right, can you all see my scribble?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So this is a similar chart as to the company I'm currently in. Not exact, but you know. At the top, you have the CEO, and below you have their executives, the CMO, COO, CTO, and below that you have directors, heads of, etc. And below that you have your managers and operational people. But occasionally you have fine lines drawn between different people. So for instance, I might be reporting to one person, but I'm also reporting to another person based on my current projects. So it's basically like, still is a bit of a pyramid, but with some dotted lines in between. So Gabby, what does yours look like?
Oh, I can see some similarities. So you have the CEO, you have the board of directors, and then you have the executives, and then you have, of course, the VPs, the managers, and then you have the staff. And the way that we are currently doing it, we get budgets for projects, and these budgets are assigned yearly. And then from that, then you can decide how many people you can hire and fill the positions.
That's interesting.
And
And if you, and you can only hire as many people as your budget allows you to.
That's correct.
Okay. And if those people don't have the knowledge, or you need different people?
Then you would need to realize that in the job description. So you need to really plan what jobs you will hire. But I'm
Okay.
curious to see how the organizations look like in the future.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we work in fluid organizations, and so I had a hard time in doing some research to in doing my prep work for this session to understand what organizational charts and diagrams were. So I tried my best to come up with an organizational chart. As I mentioned before, we don't have them any longer. So it's more like organized in bubbles. So that's the way we work. So we have, as you see in this picture, we have a huge bubble, and inside the huge bubble, we have smaller bubbles, and then even smaller bubbles, and all the white bubbles represent individuals who work together and are grouped around certain tasks, projects, or topics. So, and they might come from different backgrounds and organizations. They are what you used to call in the past interdisciplinary teams. So they have various skills. They are all focused around solving complex problems, and and if they cannot contribute any longer, they switch to another bubble. And this is also very international. So actually you would need a 3D representation of this. So this is how we work. Plus also, because I found that especially noteworthy in your diagrams, you have one person sort of at the top that everyone's reporting to, or everybody's sort of at the base of the pyramid, and we have some person at the top of the pyramid. We don't have this any longer. So people try to find decisions in those bubbles and then in these circles. And if they are not able to, they ask for help from another bubble. And it might also be the case that one bubble is just too big, so they just split up into smaller bubbles. And yeah, that's basically how we work in our fluid organization concept.
I found it really curious that you mentioned interdisciplinary, because how in this fluids organization would you have career paths? I mean, you need to have a straight line of progress in your career, otherwise you wouldn't succeed.
Yeah, but I don't understand the concept of career. I mean, that's so individual. That relates to me as an individual, but I think of us as a whole. So we can have a career path for teams or for projects or whatever, but not for individual people. So, I mean, I can learn and I can improve my skills. That would improve also my value at the global skill exchange. But I don't have an individual career. What's rather important, and that's also part of how we hire people. That's basically a two-part concept. We have a look at the global skill exchange in order to see which skills we need to solve a project. But the second step is a more important one. We match people and projects by applying a social collaboration gap fit analysis to make sure that individuals will be able to establish and maintain good communication, because that's more important. You know, in the past, and I guess you were doing it that way, is you were just looking for or you put a lot of emphasis on looking for skills. But what's more important is that people are able to communicate. So we do this social collaboration gap fit analysis to make that sure while hiring people or putting teams together at the Global Skill Exchange. Mm-hmm.
That's it sounds like it makes sense, but I think for me to fully understand and do that, it's going to take a long time to get there based on the structures that most companies have now. Which leads me to my last question. Based on where you are at the moment, what trends are you excited for? As I'm hearing for the future, and we're just at the end of the pandemic, I hope, but you said in the beginning we still have 3 or 4 more years left, and that's kind of scary, is that I'm really looking forward to people having less time at the office as we are now, but having more of like work hubs where, you know, you can collaborate with not just your colleagues who are in your office, but more the co-working spaces, and not having fixed offices for everyone, where it's more fluid, where people can choose to work from. Also having remote and be able to work across borders and different countries and not having to always pay tax into a certain country. I think that is something that's super exciting. What are trends that you two are looking forward to?
Well, on the top of my head, I can remember the J2K problem that was like a huge deal in recent years. And I'm really excited about like managing complex projects and developing further project management frameworks so that we could take a lot of these software projects and keep them in the budget and make sure that they don't go over budget in time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I'm concerned with looking to the future is we finally need to make sure we meet all the United Nations diversity and inclusion requirements. That's still a work in progress because, you know, all the nations joined together in the United Nations are very, very different. So we need to make sure everyone meets those requirements. As to work and as to leadership, we're establishing a concept of leadership and pair doing to better balance the trade-off between short-term financial and long-term societal good. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, we have a natural capital and societal capital impact balance sheet. And so we try to establish a leadership concept to meet the requirements that come with this balance sheet. And finally, regards to tech, technology is very, very important for us. It helps us to balance and monitor the time we really travel and we spend on calls or something. So tech facilitates our ability to work remotely. And plus also, you know, handling all the robot stuff because robots are very, very important to us. But then problems are solved when we work in those caves, like you see behind me. So we need to balance tech and human work, or robot and human work a bit better. Especially with the remote tech revolution that had a major impact in recent years. You know, all the human and robot work needs to work better together to create value for the world and for the people. So yeah,
Wow.
That
there are a lot of things that you just said that I'm now really excited about where computers are going, and also to be able to see you right now. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and that takes me that we only have a few more minutes left with the signal connection from the future to the past. So we'd like to get to the questions to the audience. We've prepared some questions, and please turn on your cameras and feel free to write in the chat box and let us know your answers. Here we are. So the first question to the audience, and please feel free to respond how you like. What did we learn from the past, and what do we need to change to make a desirable future happen?
I think there's a question in the chat. Do we have diversity issues in the future?
Do we have diversity issues in the future? Yes, for sure. I mean, people are different, and there's also the robots. So yeah, we do have issues there, but I think we found good ways to handle them, because we found out that how valuable it is to if people can work together in very, very diverse teams. So we do have issues, but we do get along quite well. Or is your question more pointing to how do we solve these issues, or not sure?
I think the question is in the future, do you experience that certain groups of individuals who are somehow like each other, like robots or like men or women or everybody from Venezuela, whether they also in future tend to cling together and build sort of an intrinsic bubble where it's difficult to enter in. So if you would have that, you would have still diversity issues.
Yeah, we sort of do, but we realize that like-minded people can be found all over the world. So, and we don't pay too much attention to backgrounds of people, like where do they come from, what biosex do they have, what gender do they identify with. So it's more like finding like-minded people, and that's why we use the social collaboration gap fit analysis to make that sure. But the driver behind this is not diversity, but collaboration. So we don't look at it at the problem. We don't tackle it from a deficit-oriented point of view, but from a how can we create value from this.
Mm-hmm. So on to the, if you haven't, someone would like to answer the first question, or for the second question, give yourself hands-on advice. What can we do differently tomorrow, and how? So people in the audience, what can you do in the present to make a change so we can get to the future, which Anke is in?
Volker just came up with a question, and I read it out. Do you think people may get ill when only working remote via video and don't walk around anymore? Gabi, what do you think from your perspective?
I don't have much experience with remote work, but I think there are always ways. Like I said, I try to have my meetings in separate buildings, and then I just use that as an exercise and get to my next meeting. So maybe there are ways where we could integrate all of these different activities like work and exercise and other topics into our day, which only has 24 hours. But I'm curious, how did we manage to do that?
Yeah, in the future, and well, in my future, the day still has 24 hours, but we learned a lot from the pandemic years and how working environments, the physical environments need to change to contribute to healthy behaviors at work. So as you can see, my working environment is very green, very open, has very much light and air. So to make sure people can use it to walk around, take strolls, walks and talks. So we try to make sure that people can balance their on and offline work. So and that's what we train our teams to do, to have a look at each other and take care of each other if they are too much online, and to make sure they get some social interaction.
Mm-hmm. And having a morning routine is also very popular recently. The morning routine, which is instead of looking at your phone, it's going for your walk, doing your reading, having some exercise. That's something that I'm seeing is becoming very trendy.
Hannah, yeah, we learned a lot from the pandemic years, and I believe you're right in the middle of this right now. So, and we're seeing people getting ill, getting depressive, because it's a crisis, and it was a mental and a health crisis and a social crisis as well, and we try to learn from it. So yeah, so video calls or holo Zoom, we don't use video calls that often, but more the holo Zoom to create a more natural environment, but still we make sure that people get in touch with each other. Sorry.
So if there's anyone more who'd like to answer, ask a question, we have one final question for the audience is what hinders companies to change or transform? Give examples for your own experience and observations.
Kind of interesting. I mean, maybe this is a question to the past, because I also still remember that like 15 or 17 years ago, I thought that people from India were not able to develop software properly. And probably the same would apply to people from Venezuela. So Gabi, do you experience that in the past, that people still think you're not as well educated or not as capable as like we Middle Europeans would be?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. When I was like doing research and tried to like put myself in the past, like there was no internet, there were no phones and so on. There was also, I think maybe at some point, still today, like stigmas around, did you go to this college? Did you go to this particular college? And maybe that will give you more value rather than apply in practice, right? So I think we see that in software development, where you can just prove what in practice you can do and the concept that you can understand. So I would say like we've made a lot of progress, but there's still more progress to be made.
Mm-hmm. So we're just running out of time now, so we'll go to finally our letter from the future presented by Anke.
So we did a short summary of how we envision a future, and I'm gonna read it aloud, and we will share it after we've ended this talk on the conference. So here's what we think from the future. We're human-centered, not productivity-centered. Social conscience is compulsory, sustainability over growth. We think, create, and act in networks, not in silos. We decide by knowledge, not by position. We embrace tech for purpose. We embrace change for purpose. And we think of our lives and the world as continuums, not as finite state machines. The future also includes equal work and equal pay. Diversity is not an economic asset, it is a building block of our society. Value creation at the overall societal level includes employment as well as volunteer work and care work. And last but not least, post-location-based work needs a post-location-based economic system. So that provides you with some foods for thought. Maybe you'd like to share your thoughts and ask questions after we've ended the session on the conference platform. We're happy to discuss it with you. Gabi.
Yeah, finally, we wanted to thank you for bearing with us and in this journey. This was for us a lot of insights of the past, the present, and the future, and that's why we decided to do this format. But really the idea that we would like to take with you today is that the future is not for sure. The only thing that is for sure is that things will change, but we cannot give 100% sure this will happen for sure. So we wanted to put a vision out there of how we would imagine it, how we would like it to be, to change, and just sort of put ourselves there and kind of think of how we got here and what can we do to change and move towards that in our everyday. So thank you so much.